And then there's the moon.
And then the moon's weird too.
The moon's really weird.
The moon's super
The
weird.
size of the moon directly corresponding, like when it's in orbit with the sun, completely blocks out the sun perfectly.
It's 1/400th the size of the sun, and it's 400 times closer to the Earth than the sun. You never see the dark side, which is very weird. It's actually, I believe it's closer to the Earth than what you would normally expect for a moon.
And it's huge.
It's huge. You have cultures actually talking about a pre-moon period and it's stabilizing the climate. You have the Zulu cultures talking about this. And then here's the weirdest stuff about the moon. Apollo 11, I believe, when the booster took off on the moon, they were like, "Oh, we think it might be hollow, and it's it seems like actually the outer layer of the moon is less dense, or sorry, is more dense than lower layers, which pattern matches only to an excavation site. That's obviously an Earth. The lower you go, it's more dense, right? And so Apollo 12, they intentionally crashed the booster of the lunar vehicle onto the moon. They put seismometers there, and they said that it rang like a bell. This is all fact. You could look all this stuff. It's super weird.
It is really weird. I know you did an episode about that with Randall Carlson.
Love Randall Carlson.
Yeah, he's got some wild fucking theories too. But the idea that the moon was somehow another place there to stabilize our atmosphere is so crazy.
It is crazy. And then you obviously have to sort of think in probabilities all the way down. Lowest probability, craziest thing is Ingo Swann, who is another remote viewer in the Stargate program. He wrote a book called Penetration, where he's basically like abducted by this guy in a suit, like this kind of Men in Black style guy named Axelrod. And he is told to remote view the moon. And he remote views an alien base on the moon. And he says that he gets it. The whole thing goes crazy. I mean, the book is insane. It's like he then ends up in a supermarket and he says that he senses that this woman the produce aisle is like an alien or something. But a lot of people from that Stargate program remote viewed, structures on the dark side of the moon and that sort of thing. So,
well, but AJ from the Y-Files was on, and he was the one that was telling us that there's photos, right, of the dark side of the moon, that someone had seen photos and was assuming that these would be released shortly, that there were structures. Wow, this is going to be the biggest news ever, and then it was never released.
Are you talking about maybe Carl Wolfe?
Is that what it was?
Who was taken to, this is all his claims, and he died in a freakish bike accident a little after saying this. But he said that there was like in like Langley, Virginia, where a lot of spooky stuff goes on. He was taken to some it was like inside a mountain complex, which we definitely, Carl Wolfe, yeah.
That guy bikes?
Yeah, apparently not enough.
That guy could die any time.
Oh, man.
On a scooter. So, photographs of the 1966 lunar orbiter mission that revealed large base of the moon. Can we hear what he's saying? Just hear a little bit of it.
Scan one section of the moon, then another and another, and then they would get a larger image. So this mosaic then would be put in that contact printer, and that was then a print that was issued to whomever, the press, the scientist, whatever, wherever that was intended to go. So he was showing me how all this worked, and we walked over to one side of the lab, and he said, by the way, we've discovered a base on the back side of the moon. And I said, whose? What do you mean, whose? He said, yes, we've discovered a base on the back side of the moon. And at that point, I became frightened, and I was a little terrified, thinking to myself that if anybody walks in the room now, I know we're in jeopardy, we're in trouble, because he shouldn't be giving me this information. I was fascinated by it, but I also knew that he was overstepping a boundary that he shouldn't be stepping over. And then he pulled out one of these mosaics and showed this base, which had geometric shapes. There were towers, there were spherical buildings. There were very tall towers and things that looked somewhat like radar dishes, but they were large structures. So I didn't say any more to him because I was concerned again that somebody was going to come in at any moment, would catch us having this conversation, and we would be in real trouble. I realized that he was telling me this information because he didn't have anybody else to talk to. Now, probably in that laboratory, he was probably one of the few enlisted people, and he was a worker bee. And he had a high-level security clearance, obviously, but he couldn't share that information with anybody else. And in those days, we didn't. When you had your security clearance, you took it seriously. It isn't like today where people don't take these things seriously. We had a different set of morals and ethics and values. That's the way we were raised, and we stayed bound by those agreements. So it was rare that someone would do something like this. But this fellow and I were the same rank. I think he was very distressed. He had the same pallor and demeanor as the scientists outside the room. They were just as concerned as he was, and he needed to discuss it with somebody. So that was the end of it right there. I didn't take it any further than that. I just filed it away. But the interesting thing, every day that I went home, I would think to myself, I can't wait to hear about this on the news, And, so I'd turn on the TV and I'd look at the news to see if they're going to announce, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon, being really naive, And of course, here it is 30 some years later, and we still haven't heard about it.
Whoa.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, but then there's the question of disinformation, right? Like, you could conceivably give people a bunch of nonsense and tell them about it, knowing that some of it is going to leak and and it won't be verified, and it's going to make this whole story seem even more ridiculous and make people less likely or reluctant to study it.
Totally. And in his case, he says that he was in this, mountain base or whatever, where all of the world's nations were working together as part of some collegial UN style space program or whatever. So that to me might be a little, beyond the pale. And I'm glad you made that point, because that is ufology 101. And I've heard you be incredibly exhausted and frustrated at UFO disclosure. And I think that is the reasonable response. It is limited hangouts on limited hangouts. It's just, we're going to give you a little bit, but we're also going to sprinkle in some falsities and some bullshit. We're going to stigmatize it. And it kind of works because it creates this initiation path for recruiting. If there are any of these programs, it widens the surface area. It both conditions the populace, but also stigmatizes the thing and makes it seem like kind of a joke. And so I think if you are not viewing modern disclosure through that kind of hermeneutic lens of interpretation, and you're just taking it, accepting it, imbibing it wholeheartedly, prima facie, I think you are in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, Jamie, speaking of UFOs, did you see Lou Elizondo, these photos that are supposedly of a real alien?
Oh, here we go.
Bro, it's so dumb. The photos look blurry. Of the photos of the dead alien, you can't even zoom in on that. You can't even fucking focus. Look at these. Yeah, that thing. Look at that. What is that? What's that? What is that? How about better pictures? This is crazy. These are the only pictures? Is this from the 40s? What's this picture from? What is this?
Oh, people want to believe.
Bro, so bad. Me too. I'm like, maybe the bottom ones.
It was funny. Somebody asked me, Sean Donnelly and Dan St. Germain have a podcast now about alien encounters and all that kind of stuff. And
really?
And they both really believe it. And they were like, what would it take for you to believe, Jay? I was like, irrefutable evidence?
Yeah. I have to shake hands with an alien.
the one thing I've never seen, irrefutable evidence.
There's a lot of shenanigans going on for sure.
On the back of one of those photos.
Alien, it's 1993. Alien hybrid child born to a 15-year-old girl, subject of ET genetic experiment, under chin, neck, and upper torso view. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's under chin. And then what's the other photo?
It's the same. It's just the same. It's just one photo.
Wasn't there another one? It seems like there's two photos.
That's just with this particular one.
But at the top, yeah, the one on the bottom. What's that one on the bottom? The one on the bottom seems a little turned to the side, right? Is that the eyeball supposedly?
Isn't it just one of those babies called that are born like that?
Oh, Harlequin babies?
Yeah.
It could be anything, man. I mean, it might not even be human. I mean,
Probably
it might not
not
even be, who fucking knows?
Do you think, someone like Donald Trump can hold in the information
I don't think
until
they
about
tell
his daily day?
I don't think they tell him. I don't think he can.
But who can
He's playing golf.
But who can sit on that information if you know that? Wouldn't it be terrifying it's almost that, to play. Someone who knows about aliens existing, you think also breaks off and plays golf and
Yes.
decides what they want to have for dinner tonight?
100%.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I think...
It's like finding out vampires exist. It would change everything.
I think it's a fun way to have information that you don't give to the rest of the world. And if you're the head of a giant defense contracting agency that's been back engineering UFOs for the last 50 years, it'd be probably pretty cool to know some shit that other people don't know and not tell anybody and still go to brunch.
But how are you not so consumed that you go,
because you're a
hey,
psychopath.
you want to start a new Netflix series tonight? Like, it just seems like you'd be... It's the same way I don't believe people have, like, speaking to the dead powers or psychic powers. I'm like, you'd be... You know what I mean? It's never like, oh, what is that? Tell your loved one that you missed them terribly. They miss you terribly. You guys went to McDonald's? I'll treat myself to some McDonald's. Like, how does your mind go anywhere else but, like, I'd speak to the dead? That would be consuming.
Yeah, I would never sleep.
It's supernatural.
All day talking to somebody about the War of 1776.
You just go nuts. It's just not real.
There was a video.
Can you imagine you could just tune in at any time and talk to like some Civil War soldiers.
You don't have you don't go pick out a new pair of sneakers while that's going on. I need new sneakers, I think.
If you enjoyed today's video, please share your thoughts in the comments section. And if you want more of these, please subscribe. Until next time, you are watching JRE Eclipse Conspiracy.